Hello, welcome to the FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton,
I'm Bob Scarborough.
and we are the FAIRtax Guys. I figure since I'm be cruising to Hawaii shortly, I would stand in front of my Alaska glacier this week.
It doesn't look like it's moved very much.
No, it hasn't. So, of course, you got to be watching the video to see what we're talking about. If you're listening on the radio station or an audio-only podcast, you can go to our FAIRtax Guys YouTube channel under Live. This thing's the heading. All of the live stuff that we stream, you can see what we're talking about. All right. We have got something really cool we want to get into on FAIRtax Power Radio today. But as always, we first want to begin by shining the light of truth on what the Congress critters are trying to put into the tax code, our weekly Congress.gov segment. So we will start out this week with H.R. 5558, 5558. This is Representative Ken Schreier, I think is how you pronounce that, Washington, District 8. This is called the Improving Child Care for Working Families Act of 2025. And if you dig into the text for that one, it says this is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to increase the limitation of the exclusion for dependent care assistance programs. Not a whole lot of other detail on there, but that says that that's what they want to do, to increase the limitation on the exclusion for dependent care programs. So they will call that the Improving Child Care for Working Families Act.
How about that? Isn't that nice?
And
Why in the code, though? Why in the tax code?
mercy. Well, let's do another one here. This is H.R. 5529. This is from Representative Linda Sanchez of California, the Fair Housing for Disabled Veterans Act. And you say, well, what in the world does that have to do with the tax code? And you get into here, and it says that this is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to disregard veteran disability compensation or pension payments in determining income for the purposes of the low-income housing tax credit and qualified residential rental project. Oh, wow. So apparently they want to redefine what income is and what income isn't. Disregard veteran disability compensation or pension payments when you're determining the income for the purposes of the low-income housing tax credit. I guess your income has to meet a certain threshold or fall below a certain threshold before you can get that credit. And they're going to say that your disability compensation and pension payments don't count towards that. Figure that out. That's why we have all these expensive tax attorneys and accountants to figure stuff like this out. But we don't need that garbage because none of that exists in the fair tax.
True. Yeah, I think helping veterans is a great thing. We all need to do that. There's plenty of other ways to assist in that through local community activists and actions, and churches and other organizations that feel led to do so.
You caught me with a mouthful of cheer wine. Okay, let's keep going. H.R. 5504. This is from Representative Velasquez of New York, the Flood Insurance Tax Credit Act of 2025. And you get into here, and it says that that is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow for a credit against tax for certain flood insurance expenses. So I guess if you live in a flood zone and you have to have flood insurance, they want to give you a credit against tax for the premium you pay for your flood insurance. How cool is that?
That's amazing that somebody in New York is doing that, considering most people from the Northeast have moved to South Carolina on the coast.
All right, let's keep going. This is the USA Workforce Investment Act, H.R. 5493. This is Representative Lloyd Smucker of Pennsylvania putting this one forth. It, as we speak, has a grand total of 4 co-sponsors, by the way. You can look up what they are. But the text of the USA Workforce Investment Act, or at least the summary here, says this is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code Oh, would you look at this? Another credit against tax. This is to a credit against tax for charitable donations to nonprofit organizations that provide workforce training. I thought you got a tax, not necessarily a credit. I guess you get a deduction. There's a difference between a deduction and a credit. Deduction just means that income is not subject to taxation. Credit is actually, all right, we will give you credit for the tax you owe. But now they want to make a tax credit for charitable donations to nonprofit organizations providing workforce training. Wonder which lobbyist is behind that one.
I don't know. We can go open secrets and find out.
Possibility. All right, one more here. This is the No Tax on Overtime for All Workers Act. This is Nicole Malliotakis of New York, District 11, and you dig into here, and it says, if I can get there, ta-da, bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code, very simple, to allow a deduction for certain overtime compensation. Isn't that cool?
That is. Why is it in the
Yes.
tax code? I think that's
I don't know. To allow a deduction for certain overtime compensation. So if you get overtime, you get to deduct that. If the no tax on overtime for all workers, of course, no tax on overtime was something the president was pushing a while back. And of course, the bill that came through Congress to actually accomplish that wasn't exactly a straightforward, implementation of what the president said he wanted. So now they've got another one here to provide a deduction on overtime credit back for overtime compensation. That's just cool, I guess. So there we go. That is our Congress.gov segment. We went through fairly quickly, but I mentioned we wanted to do something really cool on this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. I don't know if you remember this or not. Several years ago, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, it started with a call from Laura McHugh there in North Carolina, the state fair tax director in North Carolina. She called me or texted me or whatever. It says, I have got a really fantastic opportunity to present the fair tax. Call me back and we'll talk about it. And it turns out that she had been invited, had a friend out there who was putting on a candidate forum. It's kind of a candidate workshop. And the intended audience was people who wanted to run for office, candidates running for office, specifically running for Congress. And they were going to provide these candidates with a lot of kind of inside information on what it takes to successfully run a campaign. Because, if you or I decided that we just wanted to run for office tomorrow, neither of us has any idea what is actually involved in that kind of thing. So they wanted to provide all this information to these candidates running for office. What it takes to put a campaign together and make it work. And they invited Laura to come out to that meeting and present the fair tax to the candidates that were running for office. And Laura says, I'm going to call the FAIRtax guys and see if they'll help me out. So Ron Valero and I went out to Las Vegas and presented to these candidates several years ago. And I was just thinking about the other day, and I've still got the PowerPoint that we used in making that presentation. So I figured, let me just share that PowerPoint with Scarborough, and let's just, for the fun of it, go back over it and share all of the points, or as many of the points as we can get to, that we made with those candidates that day. What you think?
That's good. Yeah, and the thing about it is fair tax information never changes. It's pretty straightforward and very simple. And the more you know, the more you can assist in pressuring and educating your representatives, Congress, House Representatives, and Senate to get the job done. So this is a great bit of information.
All
and
right,
I will, if you want us to do a virtual presentation or come drive to wherever you are, we'll be happy to consider the best way to make that happen. If you have a group that you'd like, doesn't matter how big the group is, it could be 5 people or 50 or 100.
As I say, I've got this PowerPoint presentation up on my Google Drive. So if there are any fair tax volunteers anywhere in the country that would like to have a copy of it, just drop us a note here at the FAIRtaxGuys@gmail.com. And I will be happy to send you a link to that, and you can download it. But we started off by telling this group of candidates, there were a couple dozen of them there. We told them the fair tax was the biggest, boldest, brashest, most out of the box tax reform proposal ever made, and reminded them that when the politicians back then, this was shortly after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed, and they were just bending over backwards, patting themselves on the back, congratulating themselves on implementing this huge, sweeping tax reform. It was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And I reminded them what Kerry Bowers said about that. He said the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act took a system that was based on personal and corporate income taxes, along with payroll taxes administered and enforced by the Internal Revenue Service, took all that and transformed it into a system of personal and corporate income taxes, payroll taxes administered and enforced by the Internal Revenue Service. It did not change the system. It was not tax reform, it was tax relief. And they thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when the challenge with the fair tax, it has been presented in every session of Congress since 1999. And as we've said in previous episodes, and you may know this, that private sector economists built it, not politicians. Mm-hmm. That's the key. Mm-hmm. The fair tax.
They spent $20 million researching it to make sure that what they were coming up with would indeed work as noted. And we told the candidates as well, we run across politicians all the time that say, well, I think the fair tax might be a pretty good idea, but it needs more study. Wait a minute, it's got $20 million worth of study behind it already. How much more do you think it needs? You know, somebody's telling you that. They're just trying to make it look like they're supporting you. They don't really want to do anything about it.
Well, the fair tax replaces the federal income tax, as we all know, and when it's enacted.
Oh yeah, this was fun. I remember hearing Neil Bortz doing something similar to this. That when we went out and they were talking to those candidates, we said, when the fair tax replaces the income tax, look what happens. Personal income taxes, gone. Corporate income taxes, gone. Federal payroll taxes, gone. Capital gains taxes, gone. Taxes on interest and dividends, gone. Estate and inheritance taxes, gone. The alternative minimum tax, gone. The IRS, out of business. Federal withholding from paychecks, gone. Tax returns, gone. Over 800 tax forms, gone. IRS audits, gone. Civil asset forfeiture, gone. Compliance costs, gone. The embedded cost of the income tax system and the prices of everything we buy, gone. I was just to stand up there and just rattle off all of those points one at a time. Things that disappear when the fair tax becomes law. That was pretty cool.
And other things that disappear with regard to compliance is the amount of time that it takes to do the work, to send in that report in April. And so we have to look at purely the bottom line differences. Fair tax replacing the income tax. The fair tax is a simple, progressive retail consumption tax paid anonymously, which we've talked about before, at the cash register on the retail purchase of new goods and services. And I always emphasize new, because if you buy a used cow, then there is no tax. If you buy...
What, did you say a used cow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got the cow and you want the cow. It's my cow. It was new to me when it was a calf, when it was a little baby calf.
Oh, mercy. Only you would come up with that.
All of a sudden, you buy the cow from me, it's used, there's no tax on the cow. But that goes for cars and used houses and everything else that's used clothing. There's no tax. In other words,
man, you made me spray cheer wine all over my glasses. Hang on a second.
This program to bring you a Windex moment.
Okay, go ahead.
And the fair tax is designed to raise the same amount of money as the income tax does. Matter of fact, it's required to do that. It's very simple. There's no tax, no record keeping. We had a program last episode that we talked about. We weighed the complexity of the tax code versus the simplicity of the fair tax. and using the Occam's razor rule. And this is more of that same thing. And as we talk about it, begin to think about these things to understand and begin to articulate them to your friends and people that you come in contact with and folks that are that are your representatives in Congress. And this
Yeah,
work just as well for for your state. So begin to speak about it in those terms as well.
indeed.
So
Well, when we were out there in Las Vegas, we showed the five little FAIRtax videos that we put on the end of all of these FAIRtax Power Radio shows that you can see if you're watching the podcast. I think that probably gets edited away for the radio stations and some of the stuff like that. But all of the little about minute videos, we showed them all five of them, and again went through all of the points that those videos make. That the fair tax is simple. We talked about that last week. No tax returns required with a fair tax. No record keeping. Next
that's
point's yours, sir.
family consumption. I was trying to find an example on of the cow thing, but anyway, family consumption allowance is handled through a prebate, which is a monthly. This is very important because a lot of people get caught up by this and don't explain it correctly, and it confuses people and gets them worried. Family consumption allowance, or the prebate, is a monthly refund of taxes paid on basic necessities for legal households only. Completely untaxes everyone, families, individuals, married couples who spend at or below the poverty level. So you get a prebate up to the poverty level, and you get to feed your family before you feed the federal government. Because when you get a paycheck, that's what happens now. The income tax takes all that money away from you. You get a net amount that then now you've got to live off of that.
Yeah,
And
I love the feed your family before you feed the government. And the other cool thing is with the fair tax, the government has absolute, positively no business whatsoever knowing anything at all about your personal finances. No tax returns under the fair tax. So the government doesn't have all of this personal data on you that they can sell, that can get hacked, that can get stolen, that can, no telling what can happen to it. But a tax system where the government doesn't know all this stuff about you is a really good idea. And of course, they've got one of the videos where they're talking about how much do I bring home, and the guy on the that was representing the income tax is talking about all this is going to be taxed at this percent, going to be taxed at this percent, this, and so, and figuring out stuff. And the other guy says, "You bring home every penny."
right, it's just so simple. It's just so simple. I
Yep.
like the fact that you're anonymous while you're paying your taxes. The government has no business being looking at every single thing. And what's that penny doing on the floor under your desk that you didn't account for? Um,
Mm.
how about that lawnmower you borrowed from your neighbor and never took back during the tax year? How are you
Yeah,
going to account for that? What about all the drugs you sell, et cetera, et cetera?
indeed.
Uh,
Well, the fair tax drives down the cost of doing business. It
right.
does. It does. It not only removes the tax liability that businesses have to pay, which is just another cost of doing business that gets passed on to the consumers, all the compliance costs that go with it. Things will cost less, significantly less, at least at the wholesale level under the fair tax. That is going to attract businesses and jobs to America for sure. But when the wholesale prices go down because all of the tax costs that our current system imposes on them go away, that when those costs are replaced by the fair tax, retail prices are not going to jump by 23 or 30% like some dishonest people would try to have you believe. It's just going to be, we're going to be exchanging one tax for another, actually one tax for a bunch of different other ones that you never see. And of course, your favorite point coming up next.
No tax on savings and investment, uh, encouraging savings, not penalizing savings and investing. The economy will boom under the fair tax compared to the income tax. And it puts people in control, it puts you in control of how much tax you will pay. In other words, it puts you in control of how much tax you're going to pay. You decide what to buy. You are in control of the levers of making those decisions anyway. So under the fair, we're going to end up with the ability to say, well, I don't really need that. I might be able to get something used and save that fair tax money.
All right.
Now,
Well, again, at the end of one of the videos that we show, and again, I'm not sure which one I'm going to tack on to the end of this particular episode, but the guy talks about, imagine every criminal, every non-citizen, and under-the-table worker paying taxes. And that's what you get with the fair tax.
right. That's really something. No more unreporting income, over-reporting, deductions, it's really, it's really revolutionary. It's quite revolutionary.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, one of the most fun parts of doing that presentation out there in Vegas was explaining to these candidates that, of course, it kind of let them know if you're going to run on the fair tax, it is inevitable that somebody, either your opponent directly or more likely a PAC of some kind, is going to run a dishonest campaign ad against you, accusing you of supporting this massive new tax that's going to make everything cost 30% more. And we went through some of the things. If a dishonest ad like that is run against a candidate who supported the fair tax, the things that fair tax candidate can say back to them. If you want to get into an ad war with that, you will lose that one for sure. So let's just kind of go through all of these at once. You can, your fair tax candidate can say, I think you should bring home everything you earn. My opponent thinks the government should help itself to a big chunk of your money before you even get it. Mm.
Yeah. And the fair tax candidate would say, I want you to get a tax refund every month, guaranteed. And the opposing candidate would say, would want you to get a tax refund once a year, maybe. And you have to fight for it and spend a few more dollars to build your case.
Yeah, I think if I'm running for office and I'm trying to paint my opponent as a friend of the income tax of the IRS, that would be a sure way to get more folks on my side than against me, because I want to eradicate the IRS from the face of the earth. My opponent wants to keep the most invasive, abusive, and universally hated government agency in the entire history of the world.
Yeah, what's up with that? I mean, who would want, I mean, is it because, well, this is the way it's always been done, so we're kind of, we got to kind of do the income tax and, and why, I mean, please, let's get rid of it right now. So the fair tax say, I want April 15th to be just another lovely spring day. And my opponent wants you to spend a considerable amount of time, effort, and money filling out complicated forms that tell the government all about your personal finances, including the penny that you forgot.
Yeah, I want a tax system that collects taxes from criminals and illegal aliens and under the table cash workers. My opponent wants to keep a tax system that leaves billions of dollars owed but not collected.
Yeah, and as the fair tax candidate would say, I want a tax system where it's mathematically impossible not to pay your fair share. My opponent wants to keep a tax system that's over 70,000 plus pages long and riddled with loopholes, deductions, and exemptions for special interests.
Yeah, I want a tax system that'll bring businesses and jobs to America. My opponent wants a tax system that continues to drive American jobs and businesses overseas. Insane.
Crazy. Fair tax candidate says, I want a tax system that will restore solvency to Social Security and Medicare. Wouldn't that be great, seniors? My opponent wants to keep kicking that can down the road, which they're
I want a tax system that puts American manufacturers on
doing.
Yeah, there go. I want a tax system that puts American manufacturers on an equal footing with their foreign competitors in the global marketplace. My opponent wants to keep subsidizing imports. So I tell you what, I told them, I came up with what I thought was a pretty good line over there. They said, if you get into an ad war with somebody who's running dishonest ads about you and mischaracterizing what the fair tax will do, if you shoot back at them, you could make them feel like a rowboat in the path of an aircraft carrier. That was pretty cool. Okay. Now perhaps I should mention here that the video of that presentation is out on YouTube. Elaine Malero sat in the back of the room, and this is cell phone video. This isn't, a really professionally produced thing. This is just something that Elaine shot on her cell phone. She captured that entire presentation. It's on YouTube. Just look up FAIRtax Guys at Project 2224. If you search on that, you will find the presentation that we gave to those folks. And again, if you want the PowerPoint, we'll be happy to supply that to any FAIRtax volunteer anywhere in the country, or anywhere. I guess not going to send it anywhere in the world. We'll send that to anywhere in the country. Any FAIRtax volunteer that wants to take this and modify it if you want to suit your audience or whatever. But that will be available. Just give us a note here at FAIRtaxGuys@gmail.com. I'll be glad to send you the link to where it's stored on my Google Drive. But that was fun. It really was.
It's very well presented, and especially the left and right between this is what the FAIRtax candidate would say and what the swamp rat
how
candidate.
you can characterize your swamp rat cat. And I got to tell you one more story from that particular trip. This was so cool that let's say we were out in Las Vegas. They had us put up in a hotel. As we were leaving, we were walking through the building, headed to the front door to get in the taxi to go back to the airport and come back to Florida. And just as we were walking, of course, the way those places are designed, you had to walk through the casino to get from where we were to where we wanted to go. And just as we were walking through the casino there on our way to the front door, my pastor called me. He did, and he was on a trip of his own, so he asked me, "Hey, how are things going in Ocala?" Well, I'm not in Ocala. Oh, where are you? Well, I'm at the casino in Las Vegas.
Yeah, as long as you tithe your winnings, he was there.
He said, "What?" I said, "Actually, I'm walking through the casino all the way to the front door to go back to the airport. We've been out here, in fact, seeing the FAIRtax." But that was a fun time. So again, the FAIRtax Guys, if you would like to have us come speak to any of your organizations, meetings of some sort, one or both of us would be happy to fly out there and do that for you. We can bring our little presentation with us, and so. I want to get you in on one of these things. That's going to be fun.
Well, we can do that. That'll be good. Yep.
All
we
right.
can go back to Hey, and you could actually sell the Las Vegas trip on, the fact that you're going to end up with more money in your pocket after the FAIRtax is passed to go out to Las Vegas.
Yeah, where they will siphon it all out of your pocket if you're not careful. But all right, well, that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. That was fun. And again, if you'd like the PowerPoint, let us know. We'll be happy to send it to you. But we will see you again at the same time, same channel next week here on FAIRtax Power Radio. Until we meet again, I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So, how much will I bring home?
Go ahead.
How much do you make? We'll just say 40,000, okay? Keep it simple, throw out the deductions, all that stuff. So, you got your 40K, right? Now the first 8,000 is going to be taxed at 10%. The 8 to 33,000 is going to be taxed at 15%. And the 33 to 40, of course, is 25%. So that brings your total to $6,345.
Okay, so the average is what?
16%. Okay, and then on top of that, you got Medicare, which is 1.5%, and then of course your Social Security, which is 6.2%. So actually, your new total is $9,405.
Which is
23.65%. You're getting it. You're getting it. Don't even get me started on what the boss has to pay. He's got to pay a portion of your taxes as well, so you don't have to.
Right. And you?
Oh, you'd bring home every penny.